Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're taking a look at The Midnight Sky, the new George Clooney directed feature, also starring, of course, George Clooney, about a lone, beleaguered man who is trying to keep a bunch of astronauts from coming back to Earth. It's a strange movie, but I'm excited to talk about it. We're also going to look at Happiest Season, a delightfully queer rom-com. It's a holiday feature. That's what I've decided to title it, because I'm super hetero and not great at naming things that are LGBTQ. But it's a great movie. We're going to talk about some new trailers, things that are coming out. First things first, though, we need to get to the news, and Andy's done a little bit more reading about this than I have, so I'm hoping he'll be able to weigh in. Disney Plus reveals new Marvel Star Wars originals and a price hike. When did this get announced, Andy, and what is this about exactly?
So this was last Thursday. Disney had their earnings call where they talk about everything that what they're going to be doing in the future, and they had a huge number of announcements. We'll try to summarize as best we can, but they had announcements about Disney Plus, about Star Wars, about Marvel, about a lot of things entertainment wise. So some of the big takeaways is that they're going to be heavily investing in Disney Plus. They're coming out with 10 new shows for Disney Plus for Star Wars shows, and also 10 Marvel shows for Disney Plus, as well as a number of their films just going straight to the platform that were originally going to go to theaters. They're also increasing the model. What we didn't hear a lot of is actually what's happening with Marvel film wise, because they had a lot of Marvel not season 4, phase 4 was supposed to be underway this year, but didn't happen because of the pandemic. And so we haven't heard too much about a lot of that, but they are heavily investing in Disney Plus. They also revealed they have 86 million subscribers, which is huge for a service that's only been around for a year. So Zach, any thoughts on this?
Man, where to begin, right? It was quite the investors event. I'm not really familiar with Disney's investor event, but not only was this heavily publicized, they had a running Twitter thread on at Disney where they explained everything that's coming out with teaser images, trailers if they had them. And that's what I was following all day. So that's primarily where the bulk of my news comes from. 240 character tweets. This is a very long punch up, and I would say anybody who's interested in finding out more about what Disney's announcing needs to go look this up, because there is a ton of content here. Certainly not enough for us to cover in just this episode, especially just this news segment. But for the things that are most exciting, I think, is probably starting with Star Wars, right? 10 Star Wars series. What's interesting is a lot of these seem to be what was going to be the Star Wars stories, right? In theaters,
Absolutely.
Rogue One, a Star Wars story, or Solo, a Star Wars story. Now they've taken those properties and adapted them into series instead. Long form, at least 10 episode to start series, we assume. Some of these are particularly exciting, looking at characters like Ahsoka Tano from the Clone Wars series, looking at Obi-Wan. Rogue One is getting kind of a spinoff of its own. Cassian Andor is getting a series starring Diego Luna. There's a lot, man, and that's just Star Wars. That's not getting into all their other properties. That's not getting into their films. That's not getting into their classics. ESPN, Hulu had some relevant announcements in here, like Pixar, National Geographic had stuff. Any hot takes on the Star Wars things?
Yeah, well, while this is mostly TV related or streaming related, it says a lot about film by not saying a lot about film. They did not announce any other Star Wars films outside of whatever Taika Waititi, who was supposed to do a new film in 2022 or 2023, which shows just kind of a dramatic shift away from trying to, I think, build a cinematic universe and instead just build a streaming universe and kind of give fans everything they want through their streaming service as opposed to film. And I think that's actually a much better model for properties as big as Star Wars and Marvel. And it would be nice to see that when the films come out, they're fewer, they're better, and maybe they cap off a series, something like that.
Yeah. Something that was particularly exciting to me was seeing at the end, they announced Patty Jenkins, director of Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 1984, will be directing a new Star Wars feature called Star Wars Rogue Squadron. I don't know a lot about Rogue Squadron, but I know I played the GameCube video games, and those were pretty cool. That'll be a theatrical feature. And that's interesting because whether or not Disney's going to be pushing theatrical features this next year is a question, especially after Warner Brothers recent announcement about pushing their slate of 17 films all to HBO Max. We'll talk about that more in our next news story, actually, so keep an ear out for that. But I was also really intrigued to see what they're doing with Marvel, and Marvel follows the same formula, right, as Star Wars and The Mandalorian. 10 series, 10 streaming shows across all of their properties. It's really interesting. It's really interesting because Marvel's done such a great job of building a cinematic film universe. Now they're going to try to continue that, but outside of the theaters, outside of cinemas, and on streaming services, across episodes, across multiple shows. Remember, they've kind of done this with Netflix before, and it didn't work great. There's supposed to be a little bit of, something going on over there with Daredevil and The Punisher, and it didn't quite get where they wanted to. And now it seems like they're doing this again, but taking a more cinematic approach with their cinematic properties just at home. So that's interesting.
Yeah, they're really blurring the lines between what is film and what is TV, and it's great to see their A-list properties being used, and they're spacing them out really well. So in January, the WandaVision series starts. 2 months later, Falcon Winter Soldier. 2 months later, the Loki series. So they're covering all of your entertainment timeline. Like I said, though, they really have been pretty hush about the Marvel films, such as Black Widow, which was supposed to come out in May, which I can't imagine that'll happen, and then the Eternals, which has been pushed quite a bit as well. So it's Phase 4 is definitely on hold.
Mm-hmm. I am definitely interested to see what happens with Black Widow. I feel like that movie's going to be pushed back forever, and I mean, I don't want to say it's prime for like their $30 what do they call it, premium, like
early access
service where you pay $30 on top of the subscription fee so you can watch it at home, just like they did with Mulan, just like they'll be doing with Raya and the Last Dragon, or Raya. I don't really know yet. But what I am interested in what Disney's doing in film, right? This is a movie podcast. We're not just about streaming services. What are they doing? And some of the more interesting announcements are that they're pushing some of their live action movies that probably were going to go to big screen to the streaming service. Not all of them, and not all of them are going to cost this extra $30 fee, but I was interested to see Cruella, which is supposed to be coming to theaters in May, is now going to streaming. Pinocchio, the live action remake starring Tom Hanks and directed by Robert Zemeckis, director of
Forrest Gump
Express, and Welcome to Marwen, and also Back to the Future and Castaway and Forrest Gump. But that was Robert Zemeckis.
That was last millennium.
Dude, Robert Zemeckis makes me sad. Peter Pan reboot, Disenchanted, which is a sequel to Enchanted starring Amy Adams, Sister Act 3. All of those are going to be coming to Disney Plus. All of those are presumed to be coming at no additional premium, but they're definitely still doing the Premier Access thing, right? And The Last Dragon is getting a $30 fee if you want to watch it at home. So they're not against that either. It's some interesting news in the wake of Warner Brothers announcement.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, this is kind of a page out of the Warner Brothers book. They're going to do a hybrid release of Raya and the Last Dragon, but with the additional $30 early access fee. But you see what they're doing. They're pushing a lot of these films that probably would have been, they were smaller budget. They probably would have done okay. But that's the beauty of streaming, is that you don't have to worry about a box office bomb. You can just push it to your streaming service and say, it's adding value to what people are already paying for. And a lot of this has to do with the pandemic and just trying to figure out how to still survive when theaters are effectively closed.
Yeah. And that's like something that's really intriguing about this, right? Not necessarily just Disney's response to Warner Brothers' announcement that all of their movies are going to HBO Max at no additional cost, but how Disney is pivoting, right? They're clearly like approaching these properties not with this idea that, we'll put out 1 or 2 movies a year that are Star Wars movies, or 1 or 2 Marvel movies a year. Instead, you can have 10 series all running at the same time alongside each other. Why not? And the ones that don't work, great. You'll kill them after a season, maybe 2 seasons. The ones that do work, you'll run with them and you'll continue building. It's a really interesting content pivot, because suddenly we're not just talking about blockbuster features. We're talking about mid-budget features, right? We're talking about things that are smaller and more intimate, but definitely have much more room to grow outside of a cinema where you've got 16 screens and by God, you got to get your film on them. Like now there's just a lot more room for growth, I think. Yeah.
Well, people have long kind of contemplated is like, when will the kind of comic book juggernaut of film end. And I'm not saying we're at the end of it, but it seems like possibly the serialized film might be coming to a close. Marvel is the only people to have done that, to have 22 films all interconnected and culminating in a successful end. There's been more failed cinematic universes than successful ones. Star Wars didn't manage to do it. The horror universe, dark universe, the DCEU has struggled. So the serialization of film, which worked 10 years ago when streaming was just getting started, is kind of coming to an end. It's a lot harder to do. It's a lot harder to be successful. And it's actually easier to give customers what they want through streaming, through these big properties. You can explore the universes so much more with so many characters. And so film might kind of return to being just about the 2-hour story told over, 1 or 2 movies.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think a lot of big Hollywood people are scared of that, right? Especially old Hollywood people. The cinema's dying. Well, not really. It's just changing, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think there's a lot of potential for new stories, new ideas, new creatives, new actors and actresses, new directors, like new growth in this. Competition is good. Shaking up the industry, I think that's a good thing. We'll have to see. I mean, Disney certainly thinks so. It's part of the reason they're hiking the price, which is a big problem for some folks. They're adding $1 to the price of Disney Plus in the new year. It's going to jump from $8 to $9. Watch out. That's going to make it tough. But I mean, ultimately, that's not a bad fee. Especially the annual plan's jumping up to $10 instead. So the annual plan's going to be $80 a year instead of what was
70.
70. Yeah. So, okay, great. $80 for Disney Plus for a year. Like, that's not too shabby in my humble opinion, but Disney is going to stand to make a mint off of it because they have 86 million subscribers right now or something. It's nuts, dude. Disney Plus is growing like nobody's business.
To put that into perspective, Netflix has about 200 million subscribers, but they've been around for 13 years. Disney Plus has been around for 1. And then if you look at HBO Max is kind of dismal with only about 8.5 million. I read another article today that said, as many as 25 million people had HBO Max available to them for free for a year and did not sign up. So
I didn't know that. That's brutal.
Yeah, and part of that is the confusion because, well, if you have this service and you can get HBO Max, but if it was just a very confusing rollout and it just didn't offer enough. And now Disney is exploding their streaming offering.
HBO's launch of HBO Max is like, I hope there's a good punch up of that in like sometime next year. I hope some reporter really goes in, digs, and like, what the hell happened? How do you bungle that so bad? Like, so confusing. You still can't get it on Roku devices. It's stunning. Like, the biggest install base for streaming service offerings does not offer HBO Max. If you're on a Roku device, you can't get it. It's really something else. But they're doing their thing with the Warner Brothers movies. They're going to have a slate of 17 films coming to their service next year that I think will bolster their numbers significantly. I think HBO Max is a premium service, by God, and I'm happy to pay for it. Disney Plus might be the same thing. They also announced they're going to be, just in extemporaneous announcements, they're going to offer a new ad-free version of Hulu Plus packaged with their ESPN Plus and their Disney Plus for like $19 a month, which currently is cheaper than Hulu Plus and Disney Plus by itself. So you get a discount and you get ESPN for nothing. It's like, man, I'm all in on this. Like, the House of Mouse has my dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. They're offering so much new content, which was really the struggle when they first came out. Is everyone said, well, there's nothing on Disney Plus. The Mandalorian was single-handedly holding it together, and it did it long enough for people to stay interested in that series. And it also proved that people love a Star Wars series, and so they're going to heavily invest in that. But they have so much content, and they're still going to pursue their movies. The CEO, Bob Chapek, said, Disney had a $13 billion year in 2019 at the theater. I guess nothing to scoff at. So they're definitely still going to be in the movie business.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens. I'm a big Disney fan, probably more than I should be. So keep it here on Off Script for more from Disney. And before we move on to our next story, before our first review, Andy, you've been watching The Mandalorian, right? Season 2?
I have indeed, yeah.
I know this isn't a streaming review show, but I have not watched a single episode of season 2. I think I'm just waiting to binge it all. I don't really know, but it's coming up on the end, right?
Yeah, 2 more episodes left. Well, I will say there are some plot lines that we've seen in the second season that were things that were going to be Disney spin-off films from a Star Wars story, and they've instead converted them to the TV show successfully. I think as well.
Well, I'm curious. 2 episodes ago, ringing endorsement from Andy Draper, Mandalorian season 2.
Yeah, it started off a little rough, but it's got a lot better as it goes along.
I'll check it out then. All right, our next story. AMC warns it'll run out of cash in January and calls out Warner Brothers' shift to HBO Max. Oh no, the big studio, the big movie theaters crying because they're not getting their movies. Andy, what do you think about this?
As I've been saying all week, nothing to do with all your screens.
Yeah.
The theaters have zero leverage in this current climate, with them essentially being closed. Before the pandemic, theaters had a lot of leverage because you can't make $1 billion, you can't make $800 million without them. You need the global box office to hit these big numbers, but that's really not an option now, and it's probably not going to be an option for most of 2021. And so that's why I read an article about the Warner situation, and they had scientists and economists. They hired them to tell us what is going to happen in the future, and all the epidemiologists said no one's going to be in a theater until fall 2021 at the earliest. And so they decided to go completely online, and AMC is obviously upset about this, and they're saying that they're going to essentially be bankrupt by mid-January.
So I've said this on the show before. I used to work for AMC, right? That was my first job in high school. I worked at AMC for 3.5 years, and I loved a lot about working at the movies. But I don't think any of that was partial. I don't think I love that job because it was an AMC theater. I loved that job because I was working at the movies, and that's the important thing to remember when you think about these movie theaters, right? You don't go to the movie theaters because of the unique experience. You might if you're going to a drive-in, or you're going to Alamo Draft House, or you're going to a historic theater like the Texas Theater. AMC and Cinemark and Regal, they're all kind of the same. And these are the guys that have been standing on the necks of studios for years. For years, studios have been trying to get out from around them and say, hey, look, we want to be able to create our own content. We want to be able to put this where we can. And they've always said, no, you can't. You have to pay us a cut, because they haven't had a way to do it. And now they don't. Like Andy said, nothing to do with all your screens. On the one hand, I feel kind of bad. On the other hand, man, I love a good underdog story. I like rooting for David instead of Goliath. And the way I see it, if this is what it's going to take to shake up the industry, then by God, AMC must burn. I don't think that's a bad thing. In my humble opinion, I worked there. I had my time. It was great. But movie theaters will always be around. All right. And if AMC spent billions of dollars leasing out corporate real estate so they could open up theaters that ultimately aren't doing that well, that's a tough shake. All right. Welcome to capitalism. What do you think?
Well, like I said, I think they don't have any leverage. They are going to go bankrupt, and someone else is going to buy them. Some other company, there were rumors that Amazon was going to step in. So I think we're going to see something happen, and that's the big thing. Even with these new hybrid releases, even though a lot of things are going to streaming, people still love the theatrical experience. What this does is it shakes things up, and in a lot of ways it raises the bar. Because we'll talk about this a little bit later, but no one wants to go to pay the money it takes to go to the theater and see a mediocre film. Now, if you want people coming to the theater, you really got to get their attention. You really have to bring your A game. And this also might be, a new life for mid-budget films, because, for a while, films have either been $20 million or $200 million, and we've not had that middle ground. But now really expensive films might be difficult to actually profit of if they're mostly going to go to streaming. So overall, I think it's great for film. It's tough luck for the for the theaters, but it's going to work out. Someone's going to swoop in here.
Yeah, I agree. The theaters are still a fantastic way to make money. Like you said in the last story, Disney's CEO Bob Chapek said that last year Disney made $13 billion in profit. Are they moving some properties to streaming? Totally. Are they moving all of them? Absolutely not. Disney still stands to make money. Warner Brothers still stands to make money. All of these studios will make money if their movies go to theaters. But it's not the only way to do it anymore. And that's what's so scary for these for what is essentially an industry bottleneck that's been able to hold these studios' feet to the fire for generations now. I don't see this as a bad thing. It's like you said, people are still going to want to go to the theaters. People are still going to make money like making movies. That's not going to go away. But I think there's so much more opportunity for mid-budget films, which is something we just don't see a lot anymore at the theaters. Nowadays, Hollywood accountants say every movie has to make every dollar back and more, right? It's why we get so many blockbuster features, big budgets, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars. And not the best ideas don't always come out of that, right? Sometimes the best films you see are the sincere ones. That's why you see smaller films win at the Oscars, not Avengers Endgame, which did, I think, win couple of Oscars or something. Black Panther
visual effects or something.
The point is, yeah, like you don't need a huge budget to tell an intimate story, but in an economy where theaters are running the show and they demand every dollar possible, you do. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think theaters will be around. I think this is, if anything, shaking up the industry, offering opportunity for innovation. I feel like I'm starting to talk in circles. Any other thoughts on this before we go to the next review, I guess?
This is really what customers want and have wanted. Most people want to stay home. Most people don't want to go to the theater for a number of reasons. But this giving people the option is really the best middle ground. If people, if you are busy or if you have kids and a family and it's just hard to get out to the theater, this is a great way to do that. At the same time, if you have a really big property, things like Dune or the next Matrix movie, I definitely want to see those in the theater.
Mm-hmm. I'm in the same boat. Like I will want to go to the movie theater. It's not just because we do a movie podcast. Like I truly do enjoy the experience. I think people will too. And you know what? Honestly, for a very selfish reason, I think if we have movies that are available as streaming service, I think it'll shake out a lot of the crazies that are just going to spend the whole movie on their phone anyway or munching on popcorn way too loud. You don't have to worry about it, right? It's going to be pure. Cinema for the purists who want to be there. That's what it's going to be about. And I am personally 110% okay with that. So AMC's got to go. I don't know. No, I also think AMC will renegotiate. They will slither their way out of this horrifying tragedy somehow. Somebody will buy them and keep the name. Like, a company that big does not have that many assets and just shutter it all nationwide. There's no way. Mm-hmm. Those uniforms, those name tags, those all have value. That's going somewhere. Somebody will buy it.
It's ripe for the taking.
That's right. It'll all work out. But you know what? Maybe that jerk CEO will learn a lesson or two along the way, huh? Maybe that'll be good for him. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Anyway, with that, we should probably move on to our first review. I'm excited to be taking the summary on this one. Please excuse the clumsy presentation. I'm on one screen today. I don't have the cool two-screen thing going, so if it's a little all over the place, I'll be working it out. But this is our review for Hulu's Happiest Season. So, Happiest Season is the story of Abby and Harper, a wonderful queer couple living in what I think is Pittsburgh, maybe Pennsylvania, probably not New York. Abby and Harper are going home for the holidays, and much unbeknownst to Abby, Harper has been dishonest, and her parents not only don't know that she's in a relationship, they don't know that she's gay. So for 5 days, Abby, played by Kristen Stewart, has to essentially play straight, while Harper, played by Mackenzie Davis, kind of, I don't know, eases her family into the situation. Hijinks ensue. It's like a 142-minute rom-com, and it follows many of the same like hallmarks of the Hallmark Christmas film, right? Like it's very lightweight, it's easy, you got some laughs, you got some good acting. But at the same time, Happiest Season kind of has a wonderful little something at its core, because it's not just telling the same generic story for Christmas. This one has much more to say, and I'm excited to talk about what that is. The film is currently available on Hulu. The trailer is currently full screened on my screen, so I can't actually see whether or not it looks good for you guys at home, but I'm just going to roll with it. Andy, what did you think of Happiest Season?
So when this first started, I was like, what did Zach make me watch? Right. It starts off as it starts off like a very simple sounding Hallmark movie / Lifetime Christmas movie. You've seen the plots a million times before. Really cheesy music. Remind me of the Princess Switch with Vanessa.
Yes, Princess Switch. Christmas.
So I was like, it's like one of those movies, but with a much better cast. And so I was really skeptical through the whole kind of first act because there's a lot of, like you said, cliches and kind of ridiculous situations that aren't really as funny as they're supposed to be. It does find its way about halfway through, and it starts to really explore this relationship between our two main characters, and kind of covers some other themes about kind of hiding who you are. There's a lot of characters in the movie that have secrets, and by the end I enjoyed what it was seeing, but it took me a little bit to get into it.
Yeah, so I think the best place to start talking about this is probably our characters, right? And then we'll slide into actors, we'll get into the look and the feel of it after that. Our characters are, like you said, a little diverse, at the same time a little one note, and that's okay. This is just over 90 minutes. It is not supposed to be some 2.5 hour epic like Wonder Woman 1984. It's just telling a small, sincere story in a big way, I think. Abby is played by Kristen Stewart. Harper is played by Mackenzie Davis, who we last saw in Terminator Dark Fate, is the name of it. It was the last Terminator film. She's like the big girl Terminator that's running around, who's playing, I guess, not against type for her, but in the last thing I saw her in, against type here. We have a supporting cast played by Mary Steenburgen. Aubrey Plaza is in this film. Dan Levy from Schitt's Creek is in this movie as their friend John, which is how the two of them met. Actually, a wonderful cast. Actually, very well put together. Alison Brie is in this movie as one of Harper's sisters. They're all really tremendous. I really enjoyed everybody in this movie. I think the dialogue is not super great. The beat for beat stuff, a lot of like the funny gags and stuff, don't quite land.
Yeah.
Some of them do, some of them don't. Again, like it's kind of a holiday rom-com. It's not supposed to be perfect by any means, but for what it's worth, like, I really enjoyed everybody acting in this. Everybody seemed to enjoy what they were doing. I think they had a lot of fun. Kristen Stewart kind of plays against type as this like romantic interest for Harper. But she's actually really tremendous. She's openly gay. Her parents passed away, unfortunately, but she's not afraid of who she is at all. Yeah,
there's a whole gag about her being an orphan.
Yes, there's a whole running gag about her being an orphan. And she's trying to literally play it straight for Harper at the parents' house and try to act like, oh, I have a boyfriend and we're cool. Whereas Harper is like much more closeted. And Mackenzie Davis has a really interesting performance in this because she's trying to hide this from her family, but also be honest with Abby, her longtime girlfriend. And there's a really interesting story here about being honest to yourself and being honest to the world and what that means. But as far as performances go, Andy, any hot takes?
Well, I think the relationship is really convincing between Kristen Stewart and Mackenzie Davis. Like I said, when it first started, I was like, this is like a Lifetime level movie, but with an all-star cast. And the cast is great. There's a lot of people in here, which you get like a holiday ensemble film is pretty normal, but they're usually really bad. This is definitely better than the average one.
Yeah. And real quick, another side note, part of the reason I wanted to talk about this film is because it was trending on Hulu for like a week. It was like the #1 film on there. And also because Aubrey Plaza ended up trending on Twitter for a couple days because of a performance in this film. She plays Harper's first girlfriend. She's back in their hometown, right, where they're visiting their family. She plays a character named Riley. And Aubrey Plaza is really tremendous in this role because she kind of leans on the ear of Kristen Stewart a little bit and becomes the devil on her shoulder for their situation. Kristen Stewart's frustrated with the way Harper's been treating her, and she doesn't like that she feels suffocated in this house. And Riley's kind of there to be like, hey, you don't have to put up with this. Like, you're your own person. You can be your own individual. And Dan Levy from Schitt's Creek is really tremendous. Has a really fantastic monologue at the end of this film about what it means to kind of be yourself and accept who you are and tell it to the rest of the world whenever you're ready. Really, really great work. Like all around, I was really pleased with the performances. But as far as the presentation goes, I've got a little bit of information about that. So this was originally supposed to be a theatrical feature. Mm-hmm. Hulu bought the rights to it. And then, of course, the way everything went, they decided, hey, you know what? We're just going to put it on our service. But the part of the reason this film stands out from so many like generic streaming rom-coms around the holidays is it feels much more theatrical. It's got great cinematography, a lot of really good color, feels very Wes Anderson, very creamy kind of colors. And it's got a really solid set of shot blocking to it that like feels really good. And I feel like a lot of generic holiday rom-coms that I keep talking around, like The Princess Switch and Christmas Prince, which are all fun for their own reasons. Let me be clear. I'm not saying those are bad films, but they just feel a little bit faster, like they have shorter production schedules. They shoot them, a lot of them in studio very quickly, like over the course of a couple weeks. This feels like it took a lot more time and had a lot more sincerity to it. And I think that comes from director Clea Duvall, who has not directed a lot of features. She's formerly done a lot of acting. This is kind of one of her first big ones. It really plays, like you can tell there's a lot of sincerity, and it's because this is an autobiographical story for her, Miss Duvall. She's tremendous as a director. What do you think, Andy?
I think I just lost my train of thought.
I went on like 8 different points there. I was all over the place.
So this is a romantic comedy. I feel like the comedy isn't very strong. It's not as funny as it should be. There's a lot of gags that don't work, and this is one of the downfalls of watching it by yourself on streaming. If this were in a theater, the communal experience, a lot of the jokes wouldn't fall as flat as they do. But I didn't feel it was as funny as it was kind of should have been. And also, yeah, you mentioned the writing before. A lot of the writing is both really on the nose, but then also like really ridiculous. Like if you're watching right now, there's this ice skating scene that feels like that's like right out of a Hallmark / Lifetime movie. It seems really unrealistic. So, and like I said, the whole narrative or the struggle about kind of being closeted to her parents is, I just think not handled with a whole lot of nuance. It's very like everything's very on the nose.
Mm-hmm. It's it's a little bit of little column A, little column B, like you said. Like I think the comedy, you're right, like doesn't quite land all the time. I think some of the more cringy stuff with the parents who are very like conservative and obviously would not be very accepting of finding out their daughter is gay. A lot of that stuff doesn't quite hit. At the same time, like Kristen Stewart plays against type and is great for some of these like straight man shots, no pun intended, of the parents being like, "Oh, I heard you're an orphan," and she's like, "Yeah, like totally." A lot of that stuff actually works. I think Kristen Stewart's really good at that stuff, and I think part of the reason the script can overcome in certain areas and other places it can't is because of just the acting. Like the characters are really sincere. Kristen Stewart and Dan Levy are gay publicly, and I think they really embraced a big part of that in bringing that to this role. And it shows. Clea Duvall is also gay, and like there's a really sincere amount of quality that comes from that. I'm not saying these other films that this one's like don't have that. They do, but this one, it just feels different in a way. And I feel like the internet's noticed, right? There's a reason it was trending. There's a reason people are talking about it, and it's worth talking about. So I'm glad we had the opportunity to watch it. As far as, I don't know, things like music goes, I don't really have a lot of thoughts. It kind of, it works, but ultimately it's supposed to be a pretty toothless rom-com that actually has some bite to it. And I think that's worth talking about. Any other thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I just want to mention one thing about the. You mentioned it was sold to Hulu. In the article I was reading today in the Hollywood Reporter, it mentioned that this film cannot come out in theaters right now. It would only lose money, and it's a Christmas film. It's not like you can put it out in the summer. It's like, to quote the article, you have to put it out when the lights are up, and that's kind of how a lot of these releases or streaming or a theater or hybrid are going to work. It's going to be a case by case basis. Something like this, it's great content for Hulu. It's got big stars, but it's a Christmas movie. You got to put it out at Christmas.
Yeah, 110%. And a lot of it, like it's patently obvious they didn't shoot this like at Christmas or anything. That's something as I get older I find is like more disillusioning about Christmas movies. Like almost none of them are actually made in December because they have to come out in December, right? They're filming this stuff in like March and July. But it works. It feels sincere. Like they did such a good job of set dressing this wonderful house they're in and kind of this town. Like it really feels like an important story. Clea Duvall said this is autobiographical. This situation happened to her, which is why she wanted to bring it out. And I think if you're going to watch a rom-com around the holidays, if you're looking for a little bit of that like Hallmark cheese with your Christmas cheer, I really think you could do. I guess you could do worse. Yeah, because this one approaches it in a way I haven't seen before that feels really tremendous. And it's worth talking about. So I'm glad we had the opportunity to do it. Andy, any other thoughts before recommendation?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Happiest Season?
I think overall, yes. It's a harmless, fun holiday movie that's better than most holiday movies. I mean, there's a lot of holiday trash that comes out, so it's definitely better than most. It's not quite as funny as it should be. The writing isn't quite as sharp, but it is a great cast, and they all do a really good job. And like I said, but it took a while to get going, but by the end, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I actually really liked it. It definitely is a little clumsy in the first act, kind of getting there. At one point, I got up to go to the bathroom and came back, and Christine was like, "Oh man, you miss all this exposition." So they're at the house, and Harper's saying that her parents don't know she's gay. I was like, I've been gone for like a minute. Like, oh my gosh. But it really comes around. It really gets going. Like once the whole family gets together, and things start to pick up. It's worth it. I think it's worth your time. I really do. I enjoyed watching it. I don't think you need to be in any particular audience range to like it. It's like PG-13. It's pretty safe. There's not a lot of curse words or anything. Like it's good stuff. Happiest Season. 2 thumbs up. Highly recommended. And with that, we should move on to some upcoming trailers. Normally, Andy and I talk about before the show who's going to talk about which trailer, and we totally didn't do that this week. So, Andy, how do you want to split these up?
I'll take the first one.
I'll take the next 2, I guess. Well, please take it away.
Nobody. So this is a new action drama starring Bob Odenkirk, Breaking Bad fame. He plays a father who we see at the beginning of the trailer. Their house is robbed, and he had a chance to kind of knock out or fight the burglar, and kind of chose to back off. Feels really dejected. Everyone's kind of saying sorry that happened. Sorry, you're such a kind of weak man. Then we see him on a bus and getting in a fight with some gangsters, and turns out he's like a total badass, and he's an ex-Navy SEAL or something, and he just kind of had to turn it on for this moment, but now he's on the gangsters hit list, and there's people coming after him. So it's kind of like he's John Wick if John Wick was kind of a stay-at-home dad kind of situation. So it looks like an action comedy. It looks really over the top kind of action, and it's cool to see Bob Odenkirk in this kind of role. So I think this looks pretty cool and exciting. What do you think?
I think it checks a lot of boxes for what I would normally think is cool and exciting. It stars Christopher Lloyd in the supporting role as his father, which you never see. It's got the producer of John Wick, so it's going to have a lot of similar action and format. Obviously, there's this feeling of a guy who used to do a lot of bad stuff just kind of wants to be left alone, and then trouble comes looking for him, so he's got to step up and get back into it. So I think it's pretty good. I like Bob Odenkirk a lot, actually. I think he lands very largely in this group of traditional comedy actors and actresses who play against type and play something serious, and it works because this doesn't look like it's intentionally supposed to be particularly funny at all. I think of Bryan Cranston doing Malcolm in the Middle and then jumping to Breaking Bad. I think of Hugh Laurie doing a bit of Fry and Laurie improv comedy and then jumping to House. Obviously, those are television series, but there's a lot of potential for comedy actors and actresses to step out and do something different. And this looks like that's what it'll be for Odenkirk. And I hope that's what it is. I'm not super into what's happening here, honestly. Like I'm sure we'll probably end up watching it for the show, and for all I know, it's really enjoyable. But man, I really, I think I've seen one too many stories of tough guy. Trouble walks into tough guy, and he has to swing back. Like I get it. Like, it looks a little too stereotypical for me. It looks like it just kind of follows the same formula. But I'm excited to see Odenkirk doing his thing. I'm excited to see more John Wick style action. Like the trailer looks strong. For all I know, I could be totally misreading this thing. So I'm excited about Nobody. I hope other people are excited about it as well. Next movie we need to talk about is Nomadland. This is a curious film. This one's been shot over the course of the year. It stars Frances McDormand as essentially a modern nomad. She's a widower who follows, she's a widow. She's a widow whose husband passed away. She's retired, and she essentially travels the country, America, in a van. She lives out of it. She travels to different kind of, communities where people are camping out, staying, RV parks. She isn't quite homeless. She doesn't think in the trailer, but this is her life. She just kind of travels, and she doesn't really have a job, and she just kind of goes to little towns and picks up some work, and then after she makes some money, she hops back in the van and drives to the next town. It seems like her character might be running from something, right? Or maybe she's running towards something, and I think that's kind of the point of this trailer, to kind of give you a feeling of tone, but not really a feeling of what's going to happen. And I think it works. It looks like a lot of almost found footage. It looks like they're following around with her camera. And she's going to these things and having these experiences. It looks very down to earth. It looks very raw. It looks very real. I think it's probably an Oscar contender for sure. Andy, what do you think of Nomadland?
So this definitely looks like the independent film goer's independent film.
Yeah.
Looks like very deep philosophical take on something or other, life and the meaning of life. We see Frances McDormand being a nomad, working a bunch of kind of odd jobs, but finding family through other nomads like herself. It looks like it's going to be one of those things that it's not about what you do, it's about the people around you, these sort of things. This doesn't look very interesting to me, but I don't want to judge a film before I see it. But it definitely looks interesting.
No, I do think it's funny. You see the trailer for Nobody, and you're like, that looks like good stuff. And I'm like, it looks okay. I'll go the opposite way on this. But that's what makes this show fun. The last trailer we need to talk about is a film called Some Kind of Heaven. This one's interesting. It's a documentary. And I found the trailer for this actually earlier today before we started the show, and I stuck it onto the outline, and Andy didn't stop me, so we're going to talk about it. This is a documentary about a retirement community in Florida called The Village. The Village is arguably like America's greatest retirement community. This is a monstrously large community with multiple housing units and places for people to live. Everybody drives around in these modified golf carts. There's activities all the time of all varieties. There's huge swimming pools. There's a whole economy. They have banks. They have movie theaters. They have grocery stores inside of the village. It's an entirely self-contained retirement community for the widest of America's retirees to go spend the rest of their lives in bliss and luxury. It's like retiree Disneyland. And what's interesting about Some Kind of Heaven is it's not about the happiness people find there. It's kind of the opposite. It's about the loneliness and the isolation, and how you can have all of these physical desires. You can have everything you want right at your fingertips. You can have a want for nothing, but how that doesn't quite make you happy. And it's fascinating to me. The film follows 4 individuals in the retirement community. I don't really know a whole lot else about it, but it looks really sharp, really striking color palette, really striking presentation. It looks like some good stuff. Andy, what do you think of the trailer for Some Kind of Heaven?
I was really intrigued by it as well. At first, I couldn't tell if this was a documentary or a film.
Like a bit, yeah, right.
Yeah, meant to look. It's really interesting, and it's nice to see the representation of an older demographic here. Everyone here is a retiree, but yeah, it's about kind of looking for meaning in the retirement age. And like you said, even though they have this great retirement community, a lot of them describe it as going back to college. They still struggle in finding, well, what do we do? Like, I imagine in any community of that size, you're gonna find friends. You're also gonna find people you don't get along with, or situations, and there's gonna be cliques, and there's gonna be bullying, and even at this ripe old age. And the trailer intrigues, kind of hints at some sort of criminal element at play as well. So yeah, I'm pretty interested in this.
Yeah, you're right on the money, actually. Just a bit more about this before I move on to the Midnight Sky. So the 4 individuals it follows are, I didn't quite catch their names, but this is just me doing some back of the napkin IMDb research. A married couple, one of which, the husband, has a newfound cocaine addiction because drugs are apparently easy to get in this community, and his wife, who is like left behind, like, what are you doing? And he's like just binging every day, like hitting it. One of the men it follows is a guy who doesn't actually live in the retirement community, lives in a mobile home outside of the retirement community, and is basically cruising it every day, hoping he can pick up a sugar mama who will pay for him to move in, and he's slowly running out of funds while it's happening. And the last one is a widow whose husband died like 2 months after they got there, and is now far away from what was her home in like Maine or where they came from, and is like trying to cope in this place where she has everything, but none of it really makes her happy. It sounds incredibly sad, but I mean, that's what's so cool about the setting. Like, it's shot in this place where, like, you have everything you could ever want. It's Shangri-La for retirees. Really interested to see this doc. I'm really interested to see what comes out of this. This is coming next year. That's some kind of heaven. With that, we should move on to our final review. Andy, I'm excited to hear your hot take on this movie. Please take it away.
The Midnight Sky. So this is a new sci-fi apocalyptic drama from Netflix, directed by George Clooney and starring George Clooney, as well as Felicity Jones, David Oyelowo, and Damian Bashir, and Kyle Chandler. Our story opens in the Arctic. There has been some sort of, in the not so distant future, some sort of event, apocalyptic event. It's not specifically said what it is. It does look like it's some sort of nuclear thing. Earth, basically, everyone has about 2 to 3 weeks before everyone dies. There's radiation spreading all over the globe. We meet George Clooney's character, Augustine Lofthouse, who is a researcher and has been a researcher his whole life. Everyone is evacuating the Arctic station to go be with their families for these last kind of times. He decides to stay, saying, here is as good a place as any. He's very sullen. He's also sick. He has some sort of terminal illness.
Terminal cancer.
He has to do these blood transfusions every day. And then at the same time, there is a spaceship coming back from a moon near Jupiter that could inhabit life. These astronauts, they're headed back to Earth. They don't know that it's not habitable anymore. And so George Clooney is on a mission to try and contact them, and he has to get to a different communication station that's far away in the ice to communicate with them so that they don't come to Earth and all die. So that's our setup. There's a lot going on in this film. There's some things that work. There's some things that don't, but that's what we're going to get into. So Zach, what do you think?
I really like parts of this film. As a 30,000 foot view, like a sci-fi film that tells two like coinciding stories that kind of bounce off of and play off one another is strong. I love this idea of a kind of lone survivor having to suddenly overcome this huge obstacle he had no way planned for to try to tell what is supposed to be Earth's last remaining hope, turn around, go home. Like, there's nothing here for you, you
don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Right, yeah. And simultaneously, the story of this group of astronauts who've been gone for almost 5 years, who are about to find out, oh, we can't go back. There is nowhere for us. We're it, like that's really intriguing. This idea of playing with mortality, what it means to be human, to have a future and a vision for yourself, to have family back home. Like, all of that is really, really intriguing. And I love the sound of it on paper. I think where it starts to hurt is just Clooney's execution. Clooney's an actor first, he's director second. He's directed, I think, 6 films before this. So, like, George Clooney is not a bad director, but I think he's a great actor and a good director. And I think when you're approaching something of this scope, you might need a little bit more in the director's chair. There's some problems in editing, too, that I think probably could have been tightened up, but ultimately a lot of that falls on the director. I'm excited to talk about the more proper parts of this and what really does work. What's the best place to have that conversation, Andy?
Gosh, well, the first thing I wanted to kind of say is that I think this is another example of Netflix spending a lot of money on a mediocre script. Like, you have a good director and a great cast and kind of a mediocre story and plot line, which I think ultimately doesn't hurt. I feel like this is 2 to 3 films in one. And like I said, there's elements of each story that works. Also, a big plot point is that a young girl is discovered in the Arctic station that George Clooney is in, and that he has to kind of take care of this young girl played by Kaolin Springall.
It's quite the name. She's definitely got a tough one. Yeah, and this kind of like unexpected father figure kind of role he has to take on in the wake of like the whole world dying is really something. On its face, this is a very bleak film. And yes. that's probably where a lot of my problems come from. It's just so hopeless. Like at the open of the film, they're like, the Earth is dying.
Humanity is dead.
Yeah. 8 billion people gone. Here's the 2 people left, George Clooney and this little girl. Like, oh my God. And then, oh, well, here's all these space station ships we had going out to space to try to find new life. All of them are toast except one with 5 people on it. It's just like, okay, so the film opens on like there's 7 people left in humanity. That's a lot, right? And this is supposed to be a harrowing tale. There's got to be some danger, which means you and I and Andy both, we all know going in, not everybody's going to make it out of this thing, right? Yeah. So that number is going to dwindle. And I'm not going to say that's what happens in this film. Like, I don't want to, I'm not going to spoil it for you. You go see it and you tell me yourself. It'll be on Netflix in a week. But it's just bleak. Like, it's a bleak movie on its face. But I think Clooney does a great job of playing the man on land. I really do.
Yeah, you mentioned that the about what works. The performances are very good. George Clooney is this old, grizzled scientist who's never done any, like, he's not married, he doesn't have kids, he doesn't have a family. There's this whole kind of isolation. He's been all about his work and his research. And, he's got these great lines at the beginning. People are saying, "Oh, aren't you going to leave the station?" And he said, "Why? Here is as good a place to die as anywhere else." And there's nowhere else for him to go, and there's also no one for him to be with. So he kind of does a great job, especially also as a terminally ill person who has to do a lot of physical work. It's exhausting for him to do anything, and he kind of has to get to this other station. The space crew is also, we get good performances out of David Oyelowo, Felicity Jones, Damian Bashir. Like the cast is stellar, and the acting is top notch. I just don't think they're given a ton to work with.
No, Clooney does a great job of making them feel as if they are in 2 completely different worlds, because they are. One is a giant spaceship coming back from Jupiter. The other is like Antarctica, right? Or the North Pole. I'm not even really sure. And they really do feel like 2 very separate places, and that's fantastic. Like, the world building here is good. The Antarctica has a whole lot of like big sweeping vistas and like, big long shots of these wide frames of scenery, and that's good stuff. It also feels a little small, especially when it starts to get like tense. There's a snowstorm in particular that feels particularly claustrophobic. Turns out, I thought that was shot in a studio. I did the research. They did actually go film that in a snowstorm. Clooney could only be outside for like 60 seconds before they had to put him inside and like warm him up so he wouldn't get freaking pneumonia.
Oh gosh.
So I appreciate I appreciate the consistency. That works. The set design of this ship is fantastic. It looks really cool and futuristic. And even on the ground, he's got this rifle that's like 3D printed and has this cool stuff on it. Like, this feeling of Earth in like 2047 or 49 or whenever it's supposed to take place. That all feels pretty good. And the isolation really sells. These people feel lonely. That's an integral part of the film. And I think the actors have a lot of room to play in that space as these kind of lonely individuals who are very wayward, are very lost, and don't really know where they're headed. That stuff all works good. Where I think it starts to hurt is the direct presentation of the 2 tales, because the movie is not quite split into a part 1 and part 2, but the bulk of the action for each location on Antarctica and space is basically part 1 and part 2, and that doesn't do a great job of interweaving these tales for a climactic finale.
Right. So we have George Clooney on the ground as this revered scientist, and we get a number of background of kind of flashbacks of him kind of coming up and growing up and almost kind of having a family, but then not really. And this was actually something that I really enjoyed. They didn't try to de-age George Clooney, especially because he's got this big beard and looks really pretty grizzled. They just used a younger actor, which kind of looks like him, but more importantly, which actually sounded like him. And it may have actually even been kind of mixed with George Clooney's actual voice, but that was actually a really smart decision, which I think worked. But then you're right, like, that is one complete story, and then the space crew trying to survive the journey back. There's some action sequence in space which are actually fantastic. These 2 stories, like you said, they don't intercut very much. They don't intermingle, and George Clooney doesn't help the crew as much as you're led to believe from the trailer. It's really like there's 2 movies here, and I would enjoy watching either one, but together they don't really work.
Yeah, and that's really a shame, because that's kind of the whole point, right? Like, it's supposed to be this kind of grand tale of like The resilience of the human spirit across Earth and space, and what we've traveled, and what how we'll pioneer a future for ourselves, right? Um, but it just falls a little flat in the presentation. That's all. I mean, a lot of this stuff really works. It's really not bad, especially for a streaming film. But Annie and I did both go see this in theaters, as
Yeah.
safely as possible, of course, worth mentioning.
Uh,
And this, you said it so good when we left. What did you say? This is a perfect example of like why mid-budget films are perfect for streaming, or
Right. Yeah. Well, it's a perfect example of why people don't want to go to the theater. You don't want to go and see a mediocre film. I spent $11 on a ticket, $6 on a drink, and a bunch of crunch, and when for something that I much rather would have watched at home. It does, like, the space scenes do look really good, and that looks great on the big screen. But like I said, this is I was upset for what I paid to see this, and so would other people.
right? And I'm in the same boat. Like it just doesn't quite get over the mark for a theatrical picture. But on streaming, I mean, I don't want to just jump to recommendations, but I don't know. Any other thoughts on this for recommendations, Andy? Am I jumping too far ahead?
Um,
I do want to
uh,
mention the music, but go ahead.
well, yeah, like I said, the two stories, they don't really work together. Those are the big things. The acting's good. The effects are good. It reminded me of much better movies. That's what I was going to get to. It reminded me of Sunshine a lot, film by Danny Boyle, which is an excellent, we got to save the world in space film. Interstellar as well, as far as having the heart. And, that film's a lot about isolation and family and sacrifice as well. So like I said, I know it's not going well when a movie just reminds me of better movies.
Yeah, no, in a lot of ways it reminded me, especially the space stuff, reminded me of Alfonso Cuarón's Gravity, which Clooney was in like just a few years ago, and he said in interviews he was inspired in a lot of the space work by what happened in that film, by him, kind of looking over Alfonso's shoulder to see how he was doing it, and that stuff works great. Like the CGI is good, the world building is effective. I think a lot of that stuff is fine. Um, but ultimately I think the story on land is just a little thin, and the story on the ship is almost a little too thick, and the film comes off feeling lopsided when it tries to intercut the two of them.
Yeah.
It does come together for something that's pretty inspirational, but I mean I didn't quite feel that way. I just kind of walked away from the theater feeling like, man, that was awfully bleak, and that was a real downer. And walking into a movie theater that's half dead, where nothing's open because nobody's there, and walking out to an empty parking lot where my lone car is sitting, like, did not help the experience. I didn't walk away from this feeling like, man, like that was really tremendous. And maybe you'll feel differently watching it at home on Netflix, watching it with family, but in theaters it didn't quite have the experience I think it was intended. The music is very good. Alexander Desplat
Displat.
did the music. Yeah, I'm not sure what he's done previous, but I've seen his name in films we've watched. So I know he's doing work, and this is another one, and it's pretty good. So any other thoughts, Andy?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend The Midnight Sky?
Save it for streaming. If this were a normal year and it had come to theaters, I would say skip the theatrical release. It's not worth that price. However, it does look very good on the big screen. The effects are really good. All the space station stuff is really cool. It's a great cast. The stuff on land is also very interesting with George Clooney and the little girl he has to look after. Ultimately, these are two disparate stories which don't really connect. For me, they might for other people. I know I've heard some people who were convinced by the kind of interweaving of the narratives, but for, like I said, save it for streaming.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, 100%. Watch on Netflix. It'll be trending. I mean, when you open Netflix, I think it comes out either the 19th or the 23rd, I want to say. When you open Netflix for like a week, this is going to be the first thing that comes up. It'll be in that top 10 bar. I mean, they're going to push this big time, and like it's good stuff. Like I don't think it's bad. I really don't. It's just over 2 hours, I want to say. Good, maybe stand to be a little bit shorter,
Yeah,
but
it's a little long.
yeah, for what it's worth, watching it at home, I think is fun. There's some fun space action in there. There's some fun George Clooney acting. He's very good in this movie, very grizzled. He's very passionate about the role, obviously. But skip the theaters. You're not missing anything by going to the theater and paying $18 to watch this movie. So that's my hot take on the Midnight Sky. I wish it was more glowing, but I mean, this is such a great example of a film that like really does benefit from watching it at home. Like the streaming experience is better than going to the theater, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, well, like I said, theaters are gonna, well, studios and theaters, I guess, are gonna have to step up their game. If you want people to pay a premium to go out and leave their house, it better be good. You know, I compare it to trying to convince people to go to an apartment store instead of buying online. It's just easier. So the theatrical experience and the film have really got to be top notch to get people out, and this just wasn't it.
Yep. So that's the Midnight Sky. Andy, what are we watching next week?
Next week, we are actually taking the week off. It is Christmas week. Christmas is next Friday, but we will return the week after. We do have two big movies coming out on Christmas Day. Wonder Woman 1984 will be coming out on HBO Max, as well as Disney Pixar's Soul, both also on Disney Plus, also coming out on Christmas Day. So when we return in a couple of weeks, those will be the two big movies.
And I'm excited because those are both really big features. It'll be fun to watch this at home, right? I don't think I'm planning on seeing either in the theater. We'll see, but for the most part, I'll probably be watching this locally.
I will definitely watch Wonder Woman first at home, but I would like to see it in the theater probably at some point too.
You know, yeah, I've seen all those ads, especially Cinemark. They're like big bumper in front of all their films is Wonder Woman 84, and it says like you should see this big film in a theater, and I think that's true. I think Wonder Woman would definitely benefit from that experience. Probably Soul too. I mean, it's a Pixar film, right? It's supposed to be good stuff, but we'll have to see. If you enjoyed the show today, you can find us on Facebook where we stream our show live every Tuesday, except today, because it's Wednesday, and next week because we're off the holiday. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram. We're on YouTube where we post archives of our show. Our podcast is found everywhere podcasts are normally found, of course, iTunes, Google, the like. And if you like what we're doing here, you can write us. You can email us at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com. You can check out our website, offscriptfilmreview.com, for clips, interviews, full episodes. But the biggest thing you can do for us if you like what we're doing here is just subscribe. Subscribe to the show so you can get new episodes every single week straight to your phone. Tell your friends about it. That would help a ton. And if you can swing it, leave us a rating and review. It helps us a ton. You have no idea. Just a couple of words. Let us know what you thought of the show. We would love to hear about it and what you're enjoying this year. We're looking forward to doing our top 10s of 2021 coming into January. So it'll be exciting. Keep an ear out for that. And man, what a strange year at the movies, but we're excited to get into more of it. So from all of us at Off Script, the home of bold cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.